Okay, so we're going to be looking at the psychodynamic approach, and the lovely picture above me is of Sigmund Freud, known as the father of the psychodynamic approach. So in your booklet, if you turn please to page 30. Now, some of the things I'm going to be telling you about, they will sound a bit weird. You'll be thinking, where did he get these ideas from? But it was a pioneer for the psychodynamic approach and psychoanalytic therapy. So let's make a start. Okay, so just on page 30, as always, at week 10, not as always week 10, but put week 10, we always put the date, and the week we started it, the 15th of June. Then can you add a basic example question there, outline and evaluate the psychodynamic approach, 16 marks, and then at the bottom of the page you should have enough room for this. Another example question, discuss the contribution of the psychodynamic approach to our understanding of human behaviour, 16 marks. And another example question, compare and contrast the psychodynamic approach and the biological approach, but we won't be looking at that yet. When we get back in September, we will bring everything together and start working on these skills. So don't worry about those questions just yet. Okay, so our main objectives today, we're going to be looking at the key concepts, because there's going to be a lot of new weird and wonderful words, and I would recommend you start making your record cards as we go along today. What the psychodynamic approach assumes about our human behaviour, and how we can explain human behaviour using these theories and assumptions. And as always, we need to evaluate, look at the strengths and weaknesses of the psychodynamic approach. Okay, so what is it all about? So generally, the psychodynamic approach suggests that all human behaviour can be explained in terms of the unconscious mind, and I'll go into more detail in a moment as to what the unconscious mind is. So what we're going to be looking at, or what the psychodynamic approach looks at, is the structure of personality, defense mechanisms, you may have heard of these, most of us have used them at some point, and psychosexual stages. Wait till we get onto that bit. Okay, so in class we would discuss this. So I want you to think how the mind can be linked to an iceberg. Where it says IDAS project there, it means issues and debates, so don't worry about that. We've covered it briefly with the continuum. I should have took that bit off, sorry. But it is about that continuum with free will, determinism, etc. So what the approach, or the psychodynamic views the mind, what we can see is like the tip of an iceberg, and the rest of our personality is unseen. The majority of it is unseen, just like an iceberg. Okay, it is an analogy, and I'll go into more detail with it now. So what we're looking at here is that the tip of the iceberg, what we can see of other people's behaviour and our own, that is the conscious. Okay, that is acknowledgement of our own awareness, the awareness of others. The water, the top of the water, where it meets the iceberg, that is known as the pre-conscious. It's a dream state of your recent experiences. So you might dream of what's gone on in the day, or an adaptation of that. But what the psychodynamic approach argues is the majority of our personality is due to the unconscious, and we are shaped by our unconscious mind. So instinctual drives, we'll come on to that in a bit, trauma as well, fears, passions. So let's have a look at some examples of this. Okay, so just along in your booklet, you can be highlighting this as I'm talking, just while I explain it as well. So this isn't just a copy of what's in your booklet. I've just adapted it slightly, but it's just to put it in an easier way to start off with. So Sigmund Freud, he was the first to challenge the medical model. He really wanted to say that actually what we are doing and saying, it's the tip of the iceberg. A lot of our illnesses, psychological problems are due to what's in the unconscious, things that we are, trying to block out, putting behind us. When somebody says what's wrong, you go, nothing, I'm fine. And then you look at them like that and you're thinking, oh, all these things that you want to say, okay, that's in your pre-conscious, so you can't say it. So let's have a look at this accurately now. So this is what Freud argues. Most of our mind is made up of the unconscious, and he said it's a vast storehouse of biological drives and instincts. It shapes our personality and our behaviour. It's also useful as well because it can not remove, but still there, it can keep deep down repressed memories, so that they're locked away and forgotten. So memories of trauma, you might see on certain crime documentaries where people say they can't remember what happened to them. You're thinking, how on earth can they not remember it? It's because it's locked into the unconscious. It's to protect their actual mind so that they can still function. Also, just bubbling under the surface of our conscious mind, it includes thoughts and ideas which we may become aware of during dreams, or that point just before you wake up, or through slips of the tongue. You may have heard of Freudian slips. They usually have a sexual connotation. So you might be saying, can you pass me a penis instead of a pen? Lots of people make these mistakes as well, but also sometimes on showing that pre-conscious level as well, instead of saying miss at school, you shouted mum, or instead of shouting sir, you shouted dad. We'll look later on at why that might be. Okay, so just a bit of an introduction. This is in your booklet, and we don't really do too much about dreams and dream analysis for the specification. We will look at Freud again when we look at schizophrenia, but have a look at these symbols and what do they represent according to Freud. Okay, so we've got, so you can see them clearly there, hose, baguette, pen, gun, etc. They represent the penis, also known as phallic objects. Okay, I bet you're wondering what the hell is Wendy going on about. This is true, it's all psychodynamic approach. Okay, so we've got a plane and a helicopter there. That is to do with sex. Suitcases in a door, what open up and you find things inside. Freud said those represent vaginas. Now, this one, okay, we have an emoji, okay, for this one now, which means something different to what Freud said. He said they resemble breasts if you dream of those, of peaches. Okay, figures of authority. One was a figure of authority. Those are your parents. And vermin, that's your brothers and sisters. Okay, so you might be thinking, where has this all come from? But Freud did do a lot of work with dream analysis. And if you're dreaming of certain things, this is what they represent. They are showing your unconscious thoughts. So whether that's desire or whether that's something that you were concerned about as well. So just a bit of an intro there. Normally in class we'd be having a good laugh about that right now. You'd be asking me lots of questions. So what's it all about? Symbolism. So the true meaning of the dream is often painful. So it's disguised. So you might be dreaming, think, what was I dreaming of that for? It may be disguising something. Your manifest content is the dream symbols, what we looked at just then. and the latent content is what those symbols actually mean. Now you might think, Wendy, this is a load of rubbish, and you're entitled to think that. You might be really interested in this, so you could look further. There's lots of books out there on dream analysis with Freud. Freud's it is part of his therapies. Lots of YouTube videos as well. If you just type in Freud's psychodynamic approach, psychoanalytic therapy, there's lots out there. Okay, so how do we measure this unconscious? Again, this isn't in your booklet, but this, how we do it, but it does talk about in your booklet. If we just look at the bottom of page 30, is the slip of the tongues. Okay, so this video clip here, it talks about measuring the unconscious, but also the pre-conscious as well. So if you just type in Freudian slips, you should see this image, or if you go onto the PowerPoint version and click on it, you will see the link. Okay, what we're going to look at now, if we turn over to page 31, is the structure of personality according to the psychodynamic approach. Freud called this the tripartite theory or tripartite system because it's got 3 parts. And you do need to know what each one of these are off by heart for the exam. So, the id, we've got a devil symbol there, and we use that because the id, it's primitive, it's instinctual. If you want it, you get it, and it's operated by the pleasure principle. So it's all about what you want, you get to make you happy. It's selfish, it demands instant gratification. There's no morals here. You want a Lamborghini Diablo, you're not going to work hard for it. Sorry, it's my dream car. You go out and take it. Take what you want. Okay, that is meant to be what our unconscious drives are. Okay, driven by the id, bit known as, if you think of it as a one of those cartoon analogies, it's the devil on the shoulder. Okay, then we've got the ego. What this does is it works on the reality principle, and you need to know your principles for the exam. So if we look at the booklet there, it's a bit of a mediator. It's you stuck in the middle between the devil saying get this and the angel saying oh no, you can't have it. It develops around the age of 2, and what it does is it's trying to resolve that conflict between what the id wants and the superego saying no, you cannot have it. So for example, I would love a Lamborghini Diablo car in purple. I don't know, I just love that colour, but I can't have one of those, I can't afford it. So I get a different car. I get a Toyota Yaris. Okay, nowhere near as good, but that's my ego in action there. I'm not going to go out and steal one, and I need a car to get around, so my Toyota Yaris will have to do. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to go back to the ego in a bit when we look at defense mechanisms. Now, the superego, in your booklet there, you've got that image of an angel. It's the morality part of our personality. It's the goody two-shoes. Don't put that in the exam, the goody two-shoes. It develops around the age of 5. This is where children generally know right and wrong, and they should do, and they've got moral standards. And it's usually based on the same-sex parent as well. So boys will imitate the dad, girls will imitate the mum. Obviously, we'll criticise that later on. And what it does, this is where guilt develops, okay? And it's quite funny to see now. I've got young children where this is where they might start to go bright red if they've told a lie. So, did you take that chocolate bar out of the cupboard? No. And then they go bright red. Really? Mummy's disappointed if you're not telling me the truth. Okay, I took it. That's okay, thank you for being honest. So your superego is morality. You're starting to know what is right and wrong. Okay, and it will punish the ego for wrongdoing through guilt. Okay, so let's move on to defense mechanisms. Okay, let's do this. I'll just put these on the screen first for you, and I'll explain it in your booklet. Okay, so I want you to have a go at this. Which one do you think this showed? The id, the ego, or the superego? And what does it operate on? The pleasure principle, reality, and morality. So have a go at those yourselves. Some of them are quite obvious. So is it the id, the ego, the superego? And also add the pleasure principle if you've put the id. If we look in your booklet there, the ego with the reality principle, and the superego with the morality principle. Okay, have a go at this as well if you want to. You don't have to. So it's a bit of a challenge there. So what would the id, ego and superego suggest you do in the following situations? So you've missed lunch and are walking past a cake shop. This is me. It doesn't help that I've got the muffin man just up the road from my house. So missed lunch, not that I ever would, but just in case I do. The id would say, sod it, I'm going getting. Oh, what shall I have? A custard slice. They're my favourites. The ego would say, no, you're trying to lose weight, Wendy, don't have that. Maybe have a special case cereal bar when you get in. And the superego will say, no, you've missed lunch, you must wait until tea time. Okay, or dinner if you're posh. So it's that kind of thing you can have a go at. Okay, sorry about that, the computer froze. Let's move on to defence mechanisms now in your booklet on page 31. Now you remember, you might have forgot that I mentioned defence mechanisms is linked to the ego part of personality, because the ego's got a bit of a really big job here. It's managing the demands of the id, that instinctual drive, working on the pleasure principle, and then you've got the superego, the goody two-shoes, on the morality principle saying, oh no, you mustn't do that. So the ego's got to try and balance these conflicts all of the time to protect our conscious mind. Now there are lots of different defence mechanisms, but for the exam you don't need to know them all, and we've picked the three main ones, and ones that you've probably heard of two of them. So the first one there, repression, there, if we look in your booklet, involves pushing a painful memory into the unconscious so that it can be kept from conscious awareness. Okay, sometimes that can be good to protect people who've witnessed a horrific event or have been a victim of a serious crime. Unfortunately though, triggering events can bring those memories into the conscience. We've also got denial. We've all done this. Okay, you don't want to accept that something's is happening. You don't want the reality. So for example, coming up to exams, 10 weeks to go, right, I'll start my revision, I'll get my revision timetable sorted. 9 weeks to go, yeah, I'll make a start on my revision. Wendy, I'm going to do it soon. 8 weeks, 7 weeks go on. Oh, I'll be all right. I'll start on week 5 for revision, and then you keep saying that to yourself because you don't want to accept the exams are coming up, and you panic. Week before, you're doing last minute revision. It's no good. We've all been there. Okay, don't do it though. So displacement there as well. Some of this can be pretty unpleasant. I've used this image here for this as well. What you do here is, it's where you transfer your source of frustration, not directly onto what is frustrating you, but onto something else. So if you look there, from a parent to someone less close, okay? Or for me, before with the video, breaking, or if I've done other videos and it's like I'm shouting at the computer, it's not the computer's fault, okay, it can't directly help me. Or people, you'll have an argument and you might slam the door, that's your frustration. Okay, it's not the door you're angry with, it's the person you've just had an argument with. So those are the three main ones that you need to know for the exam. Okay, psychosexual stages. What I would like you to do on a revision card, or make a poster of these, you need to know these 5 psychosexual stages off by heart. And you're going to read through the booklet, page 31, and there's a big graph there to help you, table, sorry, on page 32 to show you how to set this up. But I'm just going to explain it to you briefly. It might sound a bit weird. Just stick with it. You have to know it for the exam. Some of it you might think, yeah, I can kind of see that. And a lot of it you might be like, what is this psychodynamic approach all about? Okay, and I love teaching this bit in a class because we get to say lots of rude words. Well, not rude, but funny words. And you get to ask me lots of weird and wonderful questions as well. So I do miss teaching this bit. Okay, so what Freud argued is childhood developed, and you can highlight that in your booklet, in 5 stages. And if you have any unresolved conflict at one of these stages, you become fixated, and I'll explain what that is in a bit. And this will carry on through your adult life. Okay, so for each stage, you need to know what the stage is called, the age, what it is, the description of it, and if you have a conflict here and it's not resolved, this is the consequence, i.e. the impact, what will happen. So the first stage is the oral stage. So if you add that to your grid now, so it's from the age of 0 to 2, and most of the pleasure takes place in the mouth, so because you're getting your food. Okay, it's instinctual as well, particularly during breastfeeding, bottle feeding, and if you have an unresolved conflict there as an adult, that can lead to overeating, nail biting, smoking, with that oral fixation there. Okay, the second stage is the anal stage, so from the ages of 2 to 3. And if you ever have children in the future, or have younger brothers and sisters, or nieces and nephews, everything's poo at this stage, or wee, and they talk about it, they think it's funny, they think it's hilarious. The pleasure is from the anus. Okay, and what the psychodynamic approach and Freud suggested was the pleasure is from withholding feces, poo, or expelling it, pooing everywhere. Okay, so if there is an unresolved conflict here, so inadequate toilet training, etc., as an adult, you've got some lovely examples there. You may become anally retentive, so you might have that obsessive perfectionism, or you could be anally expulsive, so you become thoughtless and messy. The saying tight ass comes from this, excuse my language there, but this is where it originates from, because you're withholding something, you're withholding money, and that is linked to an anally retentive personality. So if you might see on TV programs, oh, they're acting anal, that is what it's all about. Okay, you turn over in your booklet then, the phallic stage. We mentioned phallic objects at the start of the lesson, and this is to do with the pleasure is focused on the genitals. Okay, what I mean by that is, you might not notice this, but younger children forever got their hands down the pants. Okay, they're not afraid to show off the bits and bobs as well, boys and girls. Now you might think, oh, this is sounding a bit weird, this one. It does, but we've just got to stick with it. He also talked about, which again you might think is a bit weird, but it's been spoken about in Greek mythology, is the Oedipus complex, which leads to, which is to do with males becoming jealous of their fathers because they're attracted to their mothers. I know this is what it is. And the Electra complex, ladies, we have penis envy because we want to be just like our fathers. Okay, so if you're fixated here or unresolved conflicts, you don't need to go into too much detail with that. It could lead to you becoming a narcissist. So you have an over awareness of self-importance. You are the only important person in the room, etc. Okay, now the fourth stage, now this is my view, so don't put this in the exam, it's what I call Freud's lazy stage, and it might help you remember it actually. It's known as latency from the ages of 6 to 12 years. All your conflicts are repressed here. Okay, sorry, I've got my hands up here, can't really see it. I'd like a bit more detail on that, please, but there we go. It's soon followed though by the genital stage. So this is during puberty, sexual desires. So it's not about the penis or the vagina anymore, it's those sexual desires. If there is a problem at this stage, and this is what the psychodynamic approach said, I know it sounds quite offensive now, it could be difficulty to form in heterosexual relationships, which sounds like a bad thing when I say it like that, the way it's written in the booklet. Unfortunately, in those times, that if you didn't have a heterosexual relationship, that was seen as abnormal. Being gay or bisexual or questioning, that was classified as a psychological abnormality up until the late 1970s. So if you're reading this and thinking this is horrific, this is wrong, yes, I agree with you, but we're writing from Freud's time. Okay, so I understand if you're not agreeing with that. You don't have to agree with it, you just have to learn it, that's all. Okay, so so one of the ways to help you remember the stages is old age pensioners love Guinness. So the oral stage, anal stage, phallic, latent or latency, and the genital stage. You might want to think of your own, but that's a really good one. Old age pensioners love Guinness or like Guinness. Okay, so psychodynamic approach in a nutshell. So this is quite a nice summary, can be useful for your revision notes as well. So this is basically the description summarised here. Our behaviours and feelings are powerfully affected by those unconscious motives. And our behaviour and feelings as adults, including our psychological problems, not just physical, are rooted, according to this approach, i.e. they originate from childhood experiences. The psychodynamic approach says that all behaviour is usually due to the unconscious. Think about that iceberg analogy again. So all our behaviour is determined in this case. The personality is made up of the tripartite of 3 parts, the id, the ego and the superego. And it's motivated by 2 instinctual drives. So eros, the sex drive, linked to the id there, and life instinct, and thanatos, the aggressive drive and death instinct as well. Parts of the unconscious mind, the id and the superego, so the devil and the angel on our shoulder, are in constant conflict with the conscious part of the mind, the ego, which creates this conflict, creates the anxiety, and this is where we need the defense mechanisms of denial and repression. And personality is shaped as the drives are modified by the different conflicts at different times in childhood, so the psychosexual stages of development. Okay, I'm just going to go through the evaluation briefly with you. It's quite a long video, this one. You had your peel, you know how to do that now in your booklet. I'm just going to explain them. Okay, the first one for the psychodynamic approach. It's unscientific. Yes, Freud was a medical doctor. before he developed the psychodynamic approach. We can't observe the unconscious. We might be able to do some dream analysis, but that's subjective. We might be able to now look on an MRI scanner, but that's just looking at biological responses. Defense mechanisms, we can't scientifically measure those, so we're just inferring those behaviours. We're not really scientifically measuring them, so we've not got real empirical evidence. Okay. However, there are practical applications. Psychoanalysis has been developed. It's used still now as part of a psychological therapy. And it's used for a wide range of disorders as well, from phobias to paralysis, severe fear. And it is used for treating very severe mental health disorders as well. So there are some really good practical applications with it. Okay. However, the original psychodynamic approach was based on case studies, and not many of them, and not a lot of them, were carried out by Freud himself. So if we look in your booklet there, for example, Freud studied little Hans who had a phobia of horses, which Freud argued was a repressed fear of his father from early childhood being transferred, displaced onto horses. Okay. It's quite difficult. It's just one study, and that is displacement for everybody. Where did he come up with this idea? You're scared of horses because you're really scared of your father. Okay, so again, it's not possible to develop a theory of human behaviour which can be generalised to everybody from a few case studies. A lot of his original patients, or clients, sorry, were upper class Viennese women, and he wasn't studying thousands of people. It was just a few case studies. Okay, again, behaviour is misinterpreted. What I think about one person, you will think in a different way. However, it is less reductionist than, say, the biological approach. We're looking at specific instinctual behaviours and sexual desires as well. This was pioneering for the time. Nobody talked really about that in an open way. Also as well, if we look in the booklet there, halfway down on the third paragraph of page 33, for example, he argues psychosexual development is an interaction between instinctive drives, between nature and nurture. Okay, so what we really want to do, our biology, and what our environment or societal rules is allowing as well. So it's a lot more holistic. We're looking at a mixture of nature and nurture to understand our human behaviour. However, it is determinist. Go back to the iceberg analogy. The psychodynamic approach is saying the majority of our behaviour is due to unconscious forces. Psychic determinism, it's known as this, which we have no control over. So for example there, if we go back to the booklet, although unconscious drives may govern a number of behaviours, we do have conscious control. We do have laws of the land. We have religious practices that people follow, social norms, okay. So it's kind of ignoring our free will that we can actually control these desires. So like I say, I want a Lamborghini Diablo. I'm not going to go out and steal one, okay? But according to the psychodynamic approach, well, the unconscious wants it. It's the predominant part of your personality, Wendy. You should be driving around in a Lamborghini Diablo by now. Okay, so just a bit of an example there for you. Okay, so what I'd like to do, we'll look at the debates recap. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead. We've got determinism and free will. We've talked about that. So just a quick recap. Where do you think the psychodynamic approach fits on these two scales? And reductionism and holism, or holism, where does it fit there? So just have a think about that. Okay. There's also multiple choice quiz. You might want to make your own record cards with regards to this. So just pause me. I'll go through the slides. I'm not going to explain because the answers you will see as a tick. So you might want to write these down or take a screenshot of it. I'll type them out for yourself on Quizlet. So I'll just go through the multiple choice quiz. Okay, so the work to complete by the 19th of June, Friday at 4 p.m. is the essay plan. You can screenshot it, write it out, just send me a picture of it, update your glossary, complete revision notes on the psychodynamic approach, and they are just revision notes. I'm not expecting reams and reams of paper. You can type them up, handwrite them, it's up to you. There's no exam questions or Seneca this week because you've got the other topic, the other sections, sorry, that you are completing. Those will be set on your last week before you finish for the summer term and for a well-deserved break as well. So next week we will be looking at the humanistic approach and features of a science as well.